Ladies and gentlemen, history has proven that South Africa are resilient and courageous. We are also a nation that is working hard to get this country where it needs to be. We heard recently that South Africa has formally been removed from the Financial Action Task Force grey list. We have received a ratings upgrade for the first time in 25 years. These are just examples showing that we are, as a nation, are capable of pulling ourselves together and getting ourselves out of the socio-economic quagmire that we were in. So when the Honourable President called me and asked me to lead this department a little bit more than 100 days ago, I heeded the call without hesitation. I knew that the job would not be easy, but I also knew that South Africa needs decisive, credible and ethical leadership and people that are willing to serve to take our country forward. Owing to our country's socio-economic dynamics, this department often sits on the periphery of general, everyday socio-economic discourse. Environmental protection is not about creating unnecessary barriers to make it harder for business to operate, nor is it about making it difficult for regular people to access and enjoy our natural resources. Rather, this department, and I've said it many times, is the key to unlocking some of the country's biggest economic opportunities through its expansive portfolio of programs and regulatory functions. Our role is to protect, conserve, and sustainably manage South Africa's natural resources whilst enabling inclusive economic growth, job creation and environmental resilience. It is not true that job creation and economic growth on the one side is standing in opposition to environmental affairs and the protection of our environment on the other. They must work together. We must find that sweet spot, and that is the task that me and my department is trying to do. I have updated the department's key priorities to align with the national strategic priorities as set out by the President. These priorities all focus on creating inclusive economic growth and job opportunities whilst enhancing environmental sustainability and improving accountability, fiscal discipline and improved management within the department and its entities. The 7 priority areas that I have identified includes the following. 1. Science-based decision making. In this department, we've got a lot of decisions that we need to make that sometimes are controversial. We cannot make decisions based on emotions. This department, under my leadership, will make decisions based on proven objective data and science. That is the way in which we're going to do that, because those are the decisions that we will be able to defend. We've got to stand by our decisions and we've got to be guided by proven science. With regards to climate change and the mitigation and adaptation thereof, it is a priority focus for this department. And we will focus on the implementation of the Climate Change Act with a strong focus on mitigation of climate change as well as the better adaptation to the effects thereof. We are sitting here in Kruger today where we have recently seen floods, and we will address that later on. Those floods are due to climate change, and we've got to firstly mitigate them and see how we can walk back the speed that climate change is progressing, as well as better adapting to climate change so that we are better prepared when it happens. In this regard, I also welcome the appointment of the Presidential Climate Commission by President Ramaphosa in December last year. I provided him with a list of names which he approved and he appointed them. Me and this department are working very close with them, and we are looking forward to their term and assisting us, and especially assisting the President with guidance on climate change. We've also got to thirdly transform our iconic natural spaces. This is a strategic focus area where we are working to reform them to sites that must now become first-class destinations that set standards for conservation, education and sustainable tourism in the world. These iconic sites include places like Kruger National Park, where we are now, all the other sandparks, Parks Isimangaliso, as well as the botanical gardens that fall under SANBI. We must also work towards an inclusive, fair and enforcement-driven wildlife economy to ensure a just, compliant and economically viable and iconic wildlife industry that is safeguarded by a strong and efficient enforcement sector concentrating on anti-poaching. Again, we are in Kruger today where we know that we battle with poaching. And we've got dedicated people to do that, to fight that fight. As a department, we must make their hands strong. Our wildlife economy is based on the various uses of our wildlife and iconic wildlife species with an emphasis on sustainability thereof. Another priority area is our coasts for people and nature. The aim of this priority is to empower coastal communities to sustainably access and work the ocean economy. It is not right that somebody living at the coast cannot make a living out of the coast. And we must enable our fishermen to do that, again, in a sustainable way. We've also got to accelerate environmental regulation and efficiency. We must make sure that we streamline governance and compliance processes that empower and support economic growth whilst ensuring environmental protection. Finally, one of the last priorities is the importance that we implement fiscal accountability and stability in this department. This priority aims to ensure that the highest standards of fiscal accountability, prudence, and long-term stability are upheld through comprehensive spending reviews that we are instituting, thus improving public trust and securing public-private partnerships and donor funding. Ladies and gentlemen, within this framework there have already been various developments, some of which I would like to share with you today. In my first 100 days, I've engaged with various local and international stakeholders across the various sectors that we serve. I've made it clear on day one that I will be an inclusive minister, that my door will be open to people in the various sectors that my department serves. It's been an uphill battle to try and have meetings and appointments with everyone because there was such a lot of requests for that. But we are really working hard to see that we can apply and adhere to every request that we have received. Let me start with what we have done with regards to fishing and coasts. Along the coast, I have met and engaged with small-scale fishers at various places. We were at Arniston Harbour. The Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Minister Dean McPherson, joined me there because there are such a lot of places where our department and Public Works overlap. They own the harbours and we manage them, and we need to work together to improve those harbours in the best interest of our fishermen. I also had stakeholder engagement with various stakeholders at the Mossel Bay Municipality, where we looked at shark net and marine protected area issues, conservancy matters, and enforcement and other related matters. Over December, whilst my family was on holiday, that is when these took place, these meetings. I also then took part and got the community to get involved in 2 beach cleanups. The one at the Suiderkruis Beach in Mossel Bay and the other one in Dana Bay, that is also close to Mossel Bay, where we cleaned up the beaches, and I was amazed to see how much litter were on the beaches. And I'm appealing again to everybody to become involved in that. If you are walking along the beach, take a bag or something with you so that we can clean up the beaches every day. I met with several mayors of our coastal towns, as well as the mayor of the metro in Cape Town, to discuss issues of our fishing community. And I'm glad to say that in each of those meetings, I saw a willingness of them to work with this department. Our coastal economy is very reliant on commercial operations. It was therefore an honour for me to open the 172 million rand Pioneer Fisheries fishmeal factory in St Helena Bay, where I also had the opportunity to deliver the keynote speech. This is a factory that is creating a lot of work job opportunities in that community. And it's contributing a huge lot to people that did not have the opportunities to work. Not everybody can catch fish, but the fishing economy is way bigger than only catching the fish. There are the work in fishing factories like this one, boat manufacturing, several other places of employment that we can promote in this department and that are yielding results. I also met with the management of Sea Harvest, which is a huge commercial fishing company in South Africa, where we discussed aspects of commercial fishing, as well as the cooperation between the commercial and the small-scale fishing sectors. Those two sectors are interdependent, and they realize that. And it is one of my goals to make sure that the small-scale fishers also benefit from the work that the commercial and big fishing companies are doing. Under the priority of Coast for People and Nature, I also attended the unveiling of the CoastCare signage program at Blaauwberg. That was an event where braille signage on beaches were unveiled. There were several blind people there that for the first time could experience what's going on in the area surrounding them where they are at the beach. We all see signposts at the beach that we can read. We can read that there's whales in the area, or what seashells you get, what the dunes look like. But blind people could never do that. And now for the first time they are able to do that. And this is a program that we are expanding along our coastline. To stand there and watch a blind person for the first time read that really brought tears to everybody's eyes. It was such a humbling moment, and a moment for us to realize that we've got such a lot to be thankful for. With regards to waste management, I had the privilege of conducting a site visit to the Atlantis Waste Tire Depot in Cape Town, where our engagement underscored the importance of integral and integrated waste values circles. That delivers environmental outcomes while simultaneously driving industrial activity, SMME participation, as well as sustainable economic growth within the circular economy. This visit to that tire waste centre also speaks to our efforts to prioritize the implementation of an extended producer responsibility program as a strategic mechanism to strengthen environmentally sound waste management plans, whilst also unlocking economic value and creating jobs. To this end also, I had the opportunity to engage with producer responsibility organizations at the Polygo 2026 Strategic Overview meeting. This is a company that has invested more than 700 million rand into our circular economy, into assisting plastic companies to adhere to legislation. And from our department, we will support them in their way forward. With regards to climate change, I've met up with several people. During my first week in office, on the sides of the G20, I joined President Ramaphosa, as well as EU President Ursula von der Leyen and the Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store in addressing several climate change initiatives at an event at the G20. In February this year, I participated in the Mother's Forest tree planting event in Khayelitsha, where we planted 350 trees in one day, and that is also contributing towards our goal of planting 10 million trees. For this year, we will plant 2 million trees. And I want to thank Deputy Minister Bernice Swartz, which is assisting me very much in that regard. With its strong emphasis on youth participation, the Mother's Forest Tree initiatives also aligns closely with our conviction that the green economy and youth innovation are central pillars of South Africa's sustainable future. I also accompanied President Ramaphosa on a state visit to Mozambique, where I had bilateral discussions with my Mozambican counterpart, Minister Roberto Albino, on several environmental and conservation matters, and I look forward to working closely with him in the future. We've got Kruger National Park that's bordering Mozambique, and to have discussions with him and to see that we share the same objectives was good to see, and we will build on that relationship. Also, as part of our climate action efforts, I attended the 7th session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly in Kenya that took place from the 8th to the 12th of December. During these sessions, I addressed firstly, all the African ministers of environment on the effects that climate change has got on our continent and what we as African nations can do to mitigate and to adapt to climate change. I have also delivered the national statement on climate change and environmental aspects on behalf of South Africa at the United Nations Convention. Whilst at UNEA, I also participated in a number of high-level bilateral conversations with my European counterparts on various environmental issues, including the Plastics Treaty negotiations. It is important for this department to have fiscal stability, and to strengthen service delivery and operational efficiency, we need to ensure that we have the right capacity with well-qualified, experienced and representative individuals steering this sector. To achieve this, we have made significant progress on employment equity, having achieved the following: 50% representation of women at senior management level, 17% youth representation across our workforce, contributing to the broader vision of an inclusive, equitable society. While our department's 2% representation of persons with disabilities might be a good start towards inclusivity, I believe that we can do better and we will do better. One of my first acts as Minister was to give back the delegations of the Deputy Director Generals in my department. The fact that their delegations were previously revoked led to underspending in a number of key delivery areas. These are all qualified people whom I trust, and I believe that having their delegations back will assist this department very much. I gave them their delegations back so that we can see immediate improvement on required spending in key areas, which will lead to a huge improvement in the services that this department must provide to every South African out there. The department has continued to accelerate the implementation of environmental programs in line with the key national priorities. These efforts include generating over 20,000 work opportunities as part of the expanded public works program, while we also have employed 526 unemployed graduates through municipal environmental graduate programs. These efforts support the country's apex priorities of inclusive growth, sustainable job creation and economic growth, whilst we are also safeguarding the environmental integrity. In another effort to ensure organizational stability and efficiency, I was pleased to note the unqualified audit outcome for the 2024-2025 financial year, which is indicative of our strong governance protocols that we will further enhance. We can't relax on that. We must make sure that whatever we do with our finances in this department are done right. I have instituted monthly reviews of the Audit Action Plan in order to proactively strengthen our internal controls and sustained compliance efforts, which underscores a firm commitment to fiscal discipline and accountability. In my first 100 days, my department has also processed a total number of 80 environmental impact assessments, 54 of which were from the energy generation part of the society, transmission and infrastructure sector, which effectively responds to the energy crisis in our country. By finalizing those environmental impact assessments, we enabled 4,861 megawatts of electricity generation capacity into our country. Furthermore, we have managed to make the necessary amendments to the environmental impact assessment regulations to better align mining and environmental legislation, and these will be published in due course. As the appeals authority, these are important developments in supporting the growth and stability of the mining and energy sectors, which we need in this country. I've said it before and I'll continue to say it. Successful environmental sustainability is not intended to obstruct development, but rather is intended to support it. I attended the mining indaba on invitation of Minister Willie Aucamp. And whilst I was there, people said, but what does the Minister of Environment do at a mining indaba? And my answer was, this is exactly where I need to be. Because we've got to speak to these mining companies to assist them and to make sure that they adhere to the environmental requirements that we put there. As the highest appeal authority, I have concluded the adjudication of 65 appeals, comprising of 37 appeals lodged in terms of the National Environmental Management Act and 28 appeals submitted under the Marine Living Resources Act. And with reference to our fishing industry, we are busy in finalizing a further amount of more than 70 appellants whose appeals we've received via various organizations. The appeals of that more than 70 appellants will be finalized by the 5th of March. Finalization of these matters demonstrates sustained progress in the consideration of statutory appeals, and it underscores my department's commitment to upholding the principles of administrative justice, regulatory compliance, and sound environmental governance within the prescribed legislative frameworks. I have also approved the appointment of additional qualified legal staff in my office to make sure that we can catch up with the backlog that we are experiencing with appeals, and that we can in the future be able to handle these appeals much quicker. I think that would be welcomed by everybody in the sector, and these people are about to be appointed and will be trained by the already wonderful professional staff in our legal department that we've got there. As a consistent tool of trade is very important. In every area of our work, we must prioritize science-based decision-making to ensure that our regulations and policies are not biased or based on emotions, but rather that it is based on proven objective data and science that will assist us in addressing our national priorities and needs. As part of our Antarctic relief and research voyage, the South African vessel, the SA Gallas 2, successfully completed its 60-day mission, reinforcing South Africa's position as the only African nation with an active Antarctic research base, and strengthens the country's contribution to global climate and polar research. This is in addition to locally based coastal research efforts such as the humpback whale survey along the west coast to areas where we can now see what the whale populations near places like St Helena Bay is. Fisheries is one of the areas that is contentious with a multitude of challenges that affect livelihoods of many people and communities. The sector employs several thousands of people and has the potential to unlock the economic opportunities of many coastal towns. However, there is still a lack of synergy. The understanding of policies and legislation between ourselves and the fishing industry is of utmost importance. Small-scale fisheries in particular feel unsupported, and sometimes rightly so. This will change. I've had several meetings with the leaders of various fishing cooperatives, listening to their problems and working with them to solve their issues. This more than 70 appellants that appealed decisions that were made are now being handled by me in a very expedited fashion because we want to help those people. We must also restore law and order in our environmental matters. Earlier this month, we announced the 2025 rhino poaching statistics, where we had witnessed a 16% decline in rhino poaching compared to 2024. In January to December last year, 352 rhinos were poached in South Africa, with 266 being killed on state properties and 86 on privately owned parks and reserves. This was a decrease of 68 in comparison to the 420 rhinos that were poached in 2024. These declines was achieved through dedication and tactical and swift coordination. South Africa's anti-poaching and anti-trafficking efforts is very important, and in this regard I want to thank firstly Mr. Timkulu. You and the team here in the Kruger National Park are at the forefront of this battle. You are literally in a war with rhino poachers. People working here are so dedicated. They literally put their lives on the line to protect our rhino heritage. I also want to thank the private sector, rhino farmers, who at huge cost are protecting rhinos in this country. In support of the strategic priority to accelerate environmental regulation and efficiency, we have published various policy and legislative instruments which include the Climate Change Act on pollution prevention plans and mitigation plans, also the draft National Waste Management Strategy of 2026, the draft regulations to prohibit the production, distribution, import, export, sale, use of, and to phase out chemicals that are listed by the Stockholm Convention on persistent organic pollutants. We have also done the consultation notice on the intention to set and allocate the 2026 and 2027 Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, better known as CITES, on the export quotas for elephant, black rhino and leopard hunting trophies, which is why we have to continue to hold hands with various stakeholders, private sector stakeholders, government stakeholders, interdepartmental stakeholders in supporting us in this space. South Africa is definitely feeling the effects of climate change in real time, having recently experienced the floods in Mpumalanga and Limpopo and here in the Kruger National Park. We can see the effects thereof. I'm going to make some time in the near future to visit some of the affected areas in other parts of the country so that we can see for ourselves what the effect of climate change is and to convey the urgency thereof. What I know for sure is that we simply do not have the luxury to pretend that climate change is still a far-flung concept. It is here, it's on our doorsteps, and it's affecting us hugely. The department has accelerated various instruments to ensure that we do everything that we can to improve our country's chances to withhold the elements. We recently hosted wide-ranging consultations with sector departments, provinces and industry on the carbon budget and mitigation regulations, laying the groundwork for how major emitters will be held accountable. In Africa, we are the least contributing to climate change, but we experience the effects thereof the harshest. Securing funding for the next round of biennial transparency reports from the Global Environmental Facility, as well as funding for quality improvements through the Clean Air Coalition, is very important. The department trained district municipalities in mainstreaming climate planning and in planning instruments as well. Ladies and gentlemen, in this 100 years, and I'm concluding because we are taking a lot of time, I can keep you busy with a lot of things still. But in this first 100 days that we've been here, we have seen the challenges that we've got, but also the willingness of people to take that head on. I would not have been here if I did not accept that challenge, and so will nobody in my department. The past 3 months have been exciting, and the progress that we are making has made me and my department even more ambitious and motivated to fulfill our duty and to grab all the opportunities that lie ahead of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm under no illusions that there will be times that we might strongly disagree in this industry, but there will also be times that we will agree. And we're going to build out to make sure that when we disagree, we can prove with facts why decisions have been made. Therefore, as we look to the future of forestry, fisheries and the environment, we do so both with realism and resolve. The challenges before us, climate change, biodiversity loss, resource pressures and economic inequality, are complex ones and they are deeply interconnected. Yet they also present an opportunity to reshape our developmental pathway in a way that is inclusive, sustainable and resilient. If we remain guided by sustainability, inclusion and integrity, we can build a future where environmental protection and economic growth are not in competition but in partnership. A future where our natural resources continue to sustain both our people and our prosperity and the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a summary of my first 100 days in office.